Hey, Jenny.
Hey, Meth.
I missed you.
I missed you too. Welcome back from hiatus, my dude.
Welcome back. I know things have been crazy. I know Horde Prime is back, and I know we've been really getting in on fighting, fighting for the rebellion.
We've been gathering the troops. That giant 300-foot Horde Prime has been looming above us, and it's been grim, but, we are going to win in the end. That's what we do.
Queer love wins in the end. We're really excited to be back. We wanted to present to you this fantastic bonus episode with a brilliant and wonderful and hilarious and just awesome guest.
Yes, we had the best time recording this bonus ep with this guest that we both adore. We sure adore this guest. And we know that a lot of people have been anxious about Save the Cat. We obviously did not forget Save the Cat.
Obviously.
In fact, we have been taking our time because we wanted to make sure that we got the best, most fantastic guest also for Save the Cat. And part of why we've been taking our time on this hiatus is because, as you know, when we need to pause and deal with life, we do that.
Yep. Life happens. A lot of life happens.
It does.
And we love Save the Cat so much. We want it to be the best damned episode that we can make you.
It has to be. It has to be the best.
It has to be. So Save the Cat is coming soon. Don't worry. We didn't fall off the face of Etheria.
No, we did not.
And we are really excited to present this bonus episode and many more bonus episodes. So sit back, relax, and have a great time.
Have a gay old time.
Have a gay old time, and thanks for listening. Hey, folks, and welcome back to Hey Adora, your Queer She-Ra podcast. I am Force Captain Meth, they, them.
I am Princess Jenny, she, her.
And we are super duper schmooper. That's right, schmooper. Excited today for this a very special episode of Hey Adora. Jenny?
Yes, Meth?
What is this very special episode about?
Well, we have an extra special Professor Smart Brainy type of guest with us to educate all of us on some awesome early childhood type of value stuff that we can all get excited about. That's very smart and very brainy.
I know, we love the brainy stuff here. Hey there, special guest. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Absolutely, Meth. My name is Aria, they, them, and love to be here for a little Professor Smart Brain episode about children's media. I currently am a PhD student at UC Irvine, and I'm doing research into ebooks and how we can use co-designed ebooks with Latino parents to increase Latino engagement and interest in STEM. But I'm also a huge fan of She-Ra. Absolutely adore it.
Yeah, you adore it. Ha-cha-cha-cha.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
I might adore it a little bit. Yeah. I love children's media. It's something that I want to go into, especially TV and movies. And I'm so excited. As I've told you both, I followed your podcast for a while, so really excited to be here.
Yay!
We're so stoked to have you. We had a little hey, how you doing meeting on Sunday, and we just vibe.
Yes, we all heart each other.
So we are really excited to get this kind of chat started. This is something that is really near and dear to both Jenny and I's hearts. Jenny, as you all may know, has a master's in media studies.
Yeah, children's media and, educational media is definitely a place where my heart started out, and I still have a very special, warm, fuzzy place for that.
And I'm just all about making sure that the queer babies have great places to get good and complicated role models that they can understand and latch on and understand them. And, also kind of leading into that, we're going to talk about some of the good representations of different things that we have in She-Ra, some of the questionable ones, some of the ones that we've brought up that we have questions and deeper conversations about. So we're really super stoked to have this conversation with you, Aria, and let's just jump right into it. I think one of the so I think one of the things that we could, I kind of want to just like go in right from one of the angles is you definitely talked about the impact. So we kind of know the impact of like kind of maybe like older viewers of the show, like not even not like adult viewers, but like maybe older kids. I'd like to hear what you think about how it impacts younger children.
Absolutely. I think that that's a great place to start. Media affects everyone. I think that that's why media studies is so important, is because everything that you see on screen affects you. And that can be as young as 2 or as old as, 80. So seeing this kind of work being done in She-Ra is so important because there are a lot of positive representations and a lot of positive things. I write a lot about think a lot about how I think I would be a different person if I only grew up watching Disney. I think that growing up watching Hayao Miyazaki movies where he purposely made female characters who fight for everything. He has a quote where he says, "I made female characters who will fight with all of their heart for what they believe in, and they may need a supporter or a friend, but they'll never need a savior." And I think
Love that.
he purposely did that in his work because I think he saw the way that a lot of young women, young girls were represented in media. And She-Ra really does such a good job, at least in terms of like showing how AFABs are powerful. Like one of my favorite things, I think you guys even mentioned it one episode where it's like when Entrapta is found in her castle in the first episode she's in, she goes, "Oh, princesses, I'm saved."
Yes.
Yeah.
And I hold on to that a lot because I think that especially, being AFAB and being someone who has been socialized as a woman for most of my life, if I looked at representation, especially in Western media, of those women, especially queer women, I would not have been very happy with what I saw. And I wasn't. And so I really tried to, and my parents were a big part of that. They really tried to make sure that I watched, not necessarily focusing more on values, but, they focused on not showing me a lot of sex and violence when I was growing up. They really wanted to make sure that things were age appropriate, things like that. And it's hard because there's so much media coming out. It's hard for parents to really know what can be a positive influence and what can be maybe more of a negative influence. So I think that impacts are so important. Shout out to any parents out there. I would recommend Common Sense Media.
Common Sense Media is really cool.
Yeah. So
I'll sign off on that too.
It's a great site. It's a way to tell like what ages parents think children should be viewing certain content. That could be video games, books, movies, TV shows. It also has what Common Sense deems as the age appropriateness. They also have now recently added like positive values or like moral lessons or like positive representation in their site, which is huge.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because we can't just focus on like the sex and violence. Like there's so much.
Right. You can't just focus on what are the negative things that we're avoiding.
Exactly. What are the positive things?
Right. And like also what are the negative things that are, negative is such a cultural relative term, right? And so what is negative for somebody, that is in our community versus somebody that is in an evangelical community, like any representation of any queer person, let alone a queer young person is a negative thing versus, we want queer people, but we don't want this sort of like
negative representation of queer people.
Right. Or like, like full on, like everyone is like this weird heterosexist, patriarchal push. Only Disney movies, right? That whole idea.
Right. What is queer representation by queer people for queer people as opposed to like Disney queer representation, if that even makes sense.
Or
you
just
know?
Disney, or just like one day my prince will come, right? Like
Right, right.
only that, right?
Yeah.
A healthy and balanced diet,
Yeah. Yeah.
just, disgusting understandings of quote unquote diet culture aside, like a healthy and balanced, nutritional
Yes.
media environment. Yeah, I think that's a better way to describe that.
Absolutely.
I love that. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it actually goes really well hand in hand in thinking about Gina Davis's foundation.
Yeah,
And
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I love the work that she's doing. I think that it's this kind of idea of she's focusing more definitely on AFABs. And she's like, if she can see it, she can be it. And it's this kind of idea of media really tells us what the world thinks about us. So especially being from a marginalized background, if you are, one, not represented at all, then you're told that you're invisible. You're told that you don't matter. And that can be very consciously or
that you don't
subconsciously.
exist.
Or you don't exist.
Yes.
Exactly.
And that goes back, that can connect to an early modern French cultural theorist, Louis Althusser. He had a theory around that called bad subjects. If you don't see yourself reflected back from the media, the mass media that you're surrounded by in your culture, then you become a bad subject and you become on the margins of your social discourse. And then you become unregulatable. And, that can be kind of fun and punk, but also it's not fun because it sucks.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I think that every child can take that two ways. Exactly. One way could be like, oh, if I don't exist, then you're not putting stereotypes on me. You're not making me out to be something I'm not. And I can be whoever I want to be.
Right. You can't regulate me.
Which I love. But then there are also kids who see that and go, I don't matter. Nothing I do makes an impact.
Right. I am not seen. I am invisible. I don't exist. It's exhausting. It's always both. It's always both.
It's always both. Yeah.
Exactly. So then there's the second kind of representation, which is stereotypes. We've seen it. We're starting to see more and more representation, and the amount of times that I keep hearing like, well, there are Black people in it, or, oh, well, there are Hispanics in it, so don't complain. It's like, yeah, but you've made them out to be these horrible stereotypes. Either A, they're the best friend, or B, they are a horrible stereotype, or they're the villain, usually.
Right, yeah, yeah.
So,
yeah.
And,
yeah.
I was a kid. I grew up, I loved the Disney villains. My mom was a little concerned about me, but now I look back and I'm like, oh, all the queer-coded villains I was really obsessed with.
I was going to say, like, Disney villains have been, queer-coded for ages. That's,
exactly.
The transgression of gender has always, because Disney has been, since the dawn of Disney, so important to the establishment of American patriarchy and American gender roles, the subversion of those sorts of things is what makes the villain the villain.
Yeah. I mean, Ursula, my God.
Ursula's a drag queen. Like, Jafar. Yeah. I mean,
literally.
Jafar. My mom actually was slightly famous in our family because when she was a little girl in the 1950s, she loved the Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz. She didn't love Dorothy or Glenda. She loved the Wicked Witch.
The Wicked Witch is dope. That's
I know.
Yeah. No, and with Disney, I mean, I could talk about the Wicked Mouse all the time and deep dive into...
Who's the Wicked Mouse?
Disney. That's what I call Disney.
Oh, Disney is the Wicked... Oh.
Yeah,
I thought you were talking about... I was like, oh, this is a character I'm not familiar with. Yes.
Disney is the Wicked Mouse. No. Disney is the Wicked Mouse that has been polluting the ideas of kids about what they should and shouldn't be.
Of course.
For generations. But that's why, like, Gina Davis's foundation is so wonderful, that she is really thinking about if there are those kind of representations, like you don't get seen or you're seen and you're stereotyped, you're going to put yourself in a box and you're going to put yourself and tell yourself that you're only, one thing versus another. So a lot of my research is looking into who gets to be a scientist, because when you think about who a scientist is, are you thinking about the millions upon millions of old white men who are depicted as scientists throughout not only children's media, but also like adult media? Or are you thinking about the young Latino girls who have now slowly but surely been shown as scientists in media, but only just barely. Only just barely.
Yeah.
So
in a very special episode of Blossom. Right.
You know, it's or it's very much like the quirky girl is the scientist. And before we do the obviously natural segue here into our beloved quirky girl scientist Entrapta, I do want to roll a tiny bit back to what you were saying about Miyazaki and the representation of kind of the Miyazaki superhero woman and science, and wanted to just kind of drop in how much I love Nausicaa as that, like, she's a badass scientist.
She is.
Can you say what film that's from?
It's from Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind. It's a beautiful, it's his second film, I think, because the first one... No, it wasn't the first one, because his first one was an adaptation of Lupin the Third.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're right.
But it's his first, like,
true.
But it's his first let Miyazaki make his own damn movie.
Yeah, I think it's the first Ghibli film.
It's the first Ghibli film.
There we
go. Yeah, it's the first Ghibli film. And it's Jenny, it's gorgeous.
I haven't seen it. I would love to see it.
One of my favorites of his.
It's one of my favorites of his too. And the protagonist of the film, and his protagonists are generally heroes. So the hero of the film is it's the Miyazaki, like, you know, let's save nature type of thing. But in this case, it's very much the let's save nature with science type of idea.
Yeah. And she's, I think I mean, like, she's very much, because even Princess Mononoke, like, they kind of call her Princess Mononoke, but she's not actually a princess. I think that Nausicaa is one of his only princesses. And
yes, she is literally a princess. Yeah, she is.
She's literally a princess, and she is so badass. And I think that, I think about that a lot. Like, I grew up watching Nausicaa and Kiki and Sophie. All of these women are women who are so powerful and fight. And, you know, so I think in Nausicaa, the really cool thing that they talk about is even just violence, right? Like, sometimes we're driven to violence from anger. And it's like, we have to make the humane decision to not choose violence.
Yes.
And I think that it really kind of fills into this idea of, like, women are strong, women are powerful, and also women have the sense to know when to stop the violence, and they have that power within them. And I'm not saying that men don't have that power. I think men do. But the depictions of these women that he shows are a lot about women who are angry or frustrated and choosing a less violent path, or choosing
a violent path too. Like, we also, you know, we
know when it's appropriate.
Yeah.
Choosing a path forward as opposed to just revenge.
Well, I mean, in
maybe, I don't know. I'm not as familiar with all the depths of Ghibli. I didn't grow up with Ghibli. I didn't discover Ghibli until my 20s, actually. When I moved to Cali after I graduated college, I made a bunch of friends in Santa Cruz who introduced me to Ghibli. Although, one of my favorite movies of all time is The Last Unicorn, which is made by the people who would go on to form Studio Ghibli. It's like proto-Ghibli.
Really?
It was made in, like, 1982.
I know about that film. It's been on my list for a while.
Yeah, you should watch it.
It has a very like, the Earth is dying kind of vibe that Ghibli really...
Yeah. And we got to save the earth. And I think that that's such a big, powerful thing. So I think that even there's a children's musician called Raffi.
Yeah, we know Raffi.
Yeah. Okay,
oh, we know Raffi. Oh, yeah.
But he has a whole book about child honoring and about this idea of how we need to continue forward honoring our children. And that can be in, you know, making decisions for their health that they might not want, but it's like, we're honoring you in this decision. It could be, you know, like hearing them out and hearing about how they're feeling and trying to adapt to that. or it's also just like healing the planet, because the destruction of the planet is not honoring the next generation.
Yeah.
And I think that Miyazaki talks really beautifully about that, and about like community, and about kind of building this powerful community of people to then fight a common goal, like fight for a common goal. And a lot of times it is about saving the earth, and which I love. And I love that from a very young age, I was very conscious that humans are fucking up. And we need to take steps, and drastic ones, to make sure that our planet is safe. And I think that also really applies to She-Ra in a lot of ways. Like,
Yeah,
it's about
it definitely
community.
does.
Definitely.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think a lot of these things can tie into Entrapta, because we have Entrapta as the scientist that kind of in the beginning does not interface with the organic world. She interfaces with magic, but she interfaces with magic from the other magic, right? She interfaces from the magic that takes from Etheria. She interfaces with the first one magic. She interfaces with the space magic, and really is disconnected from the planet. She has that very disconnected from the planet trope of technology. And she's also the quirky science girl, too.
She's also, I don't know if this is the same thing you meant by saying disconnected from the planet. She's also, in the same way that Bo's dads are, she's disconnected from the outside world. Like, she's just doing science for the sake of experimentation and intellectual curiosity, but not for the sake of, like, implications that would affect the outside world, would affect other people, would affect the planet. Like, what is the point? Like, she's just satisfying her own intellectual curiosity. It's not like, oh, I want to help solve this problem and heal the world and help people. You know, there's no sense of there being broader implications.
Yeah, there isn't a sense of broader implications. And I think that's what adds to why she is kind of introduced as a quirky character. And I'd like to kind of have that conversation too, about what the quirky scientist is, and what does the quirky part of quirky scientist mean in terms of representation.
Yeah. First of all, just speaking about the disconnect, she's also completely disconnected from humans.
Yes.
The only people she interacts with, only people she interacts with are her staff. But then she creates robots so that they don't get lost in the maze, because even the creation of her castle is built in a way that it is very hard for other humans that are not her to get around it. And so I think that can clearly be a metaphor for a lot of different things. And going into the quirkiness that we were talking about of autistic representation, because she's quirky, but underneath that quirk, I know that obviously she is not formally diagnosed as autistic, but she is definitely heavily autistically coded.
Also, the whole robot metaphor, the fact that she's building robots, she identifies with robots. There are all of these sorts of things that one could really push into the idea of the stereotype as well, right? Even though we do love Entrapta, and love Entrapta as this fantastic kind of Nausicaa science princess, right? She's a science princess.
She's a science princess. So, I mean, the things that work really well for me when it comes to Entrapta is, first of all, she is a woman of color. So that's one. Which if you look at, I was trying to find a bunch of, women of color scientists in children's media.
Asami
is one of them. Absolutely.
Asami, you're right. Yeah.
I love Asami. You know she's my queen.
I know she's your queen.
Is badass. And she's a full-on engineer. And I was like, this is incredible. And there are, like Moon Girl. She's a scientist, and she's, in the Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. She's excellent. And I think she's Afro-Latina.
Yeah, she is. She is.
But I love that. There aren't a lot of that. So the fact that there is a scientist in this show, and she's even better than Hordak, because like Hordak is seen as this like, oh, he knows everything, and she's like,
yeah, he's a fucking idiot. He's like failing. He's a classic failing up dude.
Yeah, he's a fail son, right? He is literally the white emo fail son.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
I love sometimes I wish that you folks could see the facial expressions that all of us have. So Aria also speaks with their hands as much as Jenny and I do, and just gave the like extended hands shaking of exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I'm glad you mentioned Moon Girl, because I fucking adore her. And her best friend, Casey Calderon. I love her so much. Her little Puerto Rican New York Jew with her two gay dads.
Oh, so incredible. It's such an amazing show.
And, she helps Moon Girl stay grounded, because she's like, hey, buddy, you're not just a brain. You're actually a whole ass person. Remember food and water and sleep and human contact and, all of these good things that make you a whole person.
Exactly.
I love the two of them together, and I love Moon Girl so much.
But not a lot of people know about her, right?
Yeah.
Like, even though she's on Disney Plus, even though like all these things, like,
and she's canonically the smartest person in the Marvel universe.
I did not know that, and
Yes.
that makes me even happier.
That's right.
And so I hope that young, Black girls or young Black kids can look at this, representation and go, you know what, I can do that.
Yeah.
And so much of the world, at least in our society, is viewed as a deficit thinking, of this idea of if you are marginalized, you are at a deficit in some way.
Yes.
Right.
But what we need to start focusing on is more strengths and strength-based ideas of like, because you're different, these are the things that you can do better. Mm-hmm. Because you're different, you can do these things in ways that no one else has really thought about. Because you are...
And other people have no idea.
They have no idea. They have no idea the power that you hold. And I think that that's one of the things that I love about She-Ra, is because it has lots of different people that I think kids can relate to.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, even body sizes are, like, it's definitely just the start. And I don't always love the way that it goes. Like, I think that, like, just, like, personally, I know that, like, when Glimmer is look older, she, like, loses a lot more weight. And I know that, Jenny, I know that you talked about how, like, going through that kind of loss could really just, like, maybe, like, fuck with her appetite. And that totally makes sense. But as someone who was, like, watching this, and I was like, oh, to make her look older, like, she had to lose weight. And it kind of felt like that. And because, again, with such the sad part is that it's because there are so few people like her in media. There are so few like visually non-white and bigger people. And she's not even she's not big.
Yeah, she barely qualifies as bigger.
No, she's thick. Like
she's thick. She got
Yeah.
Right, she's barely small fat, right? Like she's thick.
Yeah, she's small fat. That's a good phrase.
And we haven't seen other people that are like, we've seen so few representations, especially in children's media of people like her. So that every single decision that they make is really important because it is stating something.
Yeah,
it feels
that's
like
correct.
It's making a statement, which is not fair.
It is.
It's not fair, not just because a character is the first character of its kind, their kind, or like they're representing a community that doesn't get seen often, doesn't mean that they need to encompass the entire experience. But
oh my gosh, yes.
We see that throughout media, right? Like I've seen so many, like, for example, In the Heights was something where it was a musical that turned into a movie, and it was incredible representation. But then there was also a lot of discourse about the whitewashing and how a lot of the main cast was not really representative of the variety of skin tones in that neighborhood.
I mean, I got my own issues with Lin-Manuel Miranda and his liberal whitewashing of all of the things. Yeah, thank you for tapping your nose in agreement. But
absolutely. And I do, and I feel that way. But then people are upset when they don't feel represented in the media that is the singular media that is supposed to represent them because there is so few out there. Mm-hmm. That even happened with Never Have I Ever, with the Indian community. A lot of people were upset because they were like, Davy's experience isn't like mine as a, first gen American.
It's like, she's just one person. She can't represent every single person's experience. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I really feel that. And I think I've mentioned this on the pod at least once, that like, when I was an out queer teen in the 90s, I was the only out person at my school. And so like, even my well-meaning teachers who supported me, they laid so much responsibility on me to represent the entire queer community. It's like, I'm one person and I'm 15. Like, I can't be everything for you.
Right.
Exactly.
And so that's the same for Davy. Like, she's one person, like, and I know that this isn't why she was temporarily paralyzed, but like, she has so much put on her that she lost the use of her legs. Like, come on, she's one person.
Exactly.
I do want to say that something that you do notice in genre, and I use genre broadly, fantasy, horror, sci-fi. That's what I mean when I say genre.
Yeah.
That these things, this sort of question of representation is a little more kind of loosey-goosey. And this is something that we've had in the conversation on the pod in terms of positive things. Like, a lot of the times, if something is set in space or in the future, the question is not there because things are better. Like Star Trek, for example, even though it is written now and it still is fraught with the things that happen now, in the future, we have the it's no big deal type of idea or situation. Mm-hmm. Or there are also things that we've talked about. We talked about this with High Priestess Sean, about the othering of different races as turning these different races into symbolic other animals. And we've talked about that with Catra.
Yes.
But this is also something that in realistic dramas, you see a lot of the like, I have to represent this realistically, and therefore I have to be this kind of paradigm of a queer person versus, there's this fantastic film that I love called Polite Society.
Is that the Nahnatchka Khan one?
Yes.
I love that movie. Yes,
everything that she does is great because I feel like she does a fantastic job of being like, this is who I am. I'm, a Londoner Desi. And I'm representing my experience, but also I'm making a sci-fi like karate movie.
Yes.
Or I'm making like a punk rock like a TV show about like a punk band. Right? Like, and I feel like that leads to like letting people tell their own stories.
Yes.
Is really kind of the way to solve this problem. And that is kind of the crux of the like breaking into the old boys club, which is still there.
Yeah, and I think that you guys have talked about that a lot on She-Ra, right? Because, well, there were a lot of queer people in that room, and we are not always represented in those writers' rooms. And I think that that is one of the reasons why we get such a complex love story between, Catra and Adora, while also, actually having it end with them getting together. I think that the first time I watched it, I didn't know anything. I really I didn't try to look at any spoilers or anything like that. And I was like, I didn't get my hopes up. I've gotten to the point where I was like,
yes,
they have such good chemistry, but they're never going to let them get together. Like,
same. I had no expectations.
None whatsoever. I was just like, they gay. Okay, but this is never going to happen.
Exactly. And I think that it also, and then it made me, anytime they had a moment, I was like, oh, like just, I didn't want to see it the first time that I watched it because I was like, they're just going to end up as friends and it's going to, or enemies forever and nothing's going to happen. So I think that the fact that there were queer people in that room, they knew how important it was to not only have this complex these complex, multi-dimensional queer characters.
Yes.
And also some not as multi-dimensional and complex. Like, I feel like I love Bo's dads, and I love Natasha and Spinnerella. Like, and just like from the beginning, there is just this like queerness in the show, and I love that. But there weren't not white people in that room, and I think that you guys have talked a lot about
that's also pretty clear.
It's very clear.
Very clear. And besides the skin tone, like, there's not really any culture there. And, you know, and then
it's
you can also
surface level diversity only.
Yeah.
Surface level diversity. But to be fair, it's better than most things out there. And I really hate that I have to be like, well, you know, but it's a start. I think it is a start because it's not, a lot of the negative traits are not ever really attributed to anyone's race in the show. And it's, I feel like that's pretty true.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
And everyone is also, they're they're more complex characters. I know that you guys have talked about how Bo is not always the most fleshed out character, which I agree, but they're multidimensional, I think, in a lot of different ways.
I would agree to that statement. Like, sometimes they might not be as complex, but a character does not have to be complex to be multidimensional.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. And, you know, Nate has made statements over the years about, you know, how he was striving to make Bo a positive male role model, and maybe he went a little too far, but, you know, it's like better that than the other way around, you know. And obviously we know he was struggling with his own gender identity throughout the time he was making She-Ra, and that's something we can all understand, certainly, that, you know, art is how you wrestle with your own internal shit.
Yeah. And absolutely. And I also I kind of like this idea of just like thinking about how sometimes we just need the like positive representation. There's so much negative out there for every kind of marginalized community. There are decades worth of cinema and TV shows that are just stereotypes upon stereotypes and negative representation upon negative representation, or making the marginalized person the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
But for this, I think that in this show, they show just such beautiful people and beautiful humans and friends. And I think that I agree. I think that sometimes we still deserve the complex, but also just having a lovely Black male model, a role model, is beautiful and important for kids.
And he's, you know, and he subverts a lot of the stereotypes of the Black male in media. Like,
he certainly does.
Which they see all of the time. Bo is soft. Bo is kind. Bo is led by emotion. And these are things that Hollywood is just horrible at showing for Black men, especially.
Yeah.
So, you know, with Bo, sometimes it feels like an overcorrection, but as Jenny mentioned, like, that Nate has copped to that, you know, and we still love that.
That's necessary. The pendulum has to swing back before it can equalize.
Right, exactly.
Have you guys seen, I can't remember what platform I saw this on, if it was TikTok or YouTube, but there's like little short videos and it's titled Black Men Frolicking in Fields.
No, but that's fantastic.
And it's just like good. It's just good for your heart. It's just a series of clips joined together of Black men frolicking.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
Will really make your heart happy.
Yeah. Seeing Black joy is so important.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, I think, you know, we're all sitting here, none of us are Black, and
none of us are Black. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, but
I think it's important, like, if we really care about allyship, for us to hold the preciousness of that and the importance of that for all of our cultures. It can't only be Black people that care about Black joy.
Agreed. Exactly. And that's why I'm like, we're sitting here, you know, holding up our, that kind of message, because it is Black joy is so important in this in everywhere, but especially in this country. So I'm really glad that there is someone that the kids can look up to, like Bo, or, you know, even, you know,
and
Moon
Natasa
Girl.
and Lonnie.
And Lonnie. Oh, Lonnie.
Oh, love Lonnie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we have another chance to talk about Lonnie, even though her part in the series is pretty much over now that we're in season 5.
But we love Lonnie.
We love Lonnie.
We always love Lonnie.
We love Lonnie so much.
But yeah, so seeing that kind of positive representation is
and Moon Girl, I mean, like, I really, really love Moon Girl. I mean, I am a big cartoon fan, but it takes a lot for a cartoon to really grab me. I have, you know, high standards, and I don't know if I could really list them out. It's not like I have a checklist. Like, well, it has to meet all of these criteria. Like, it's really about heart.
Yeah.
And Moon Girl has a lot of black joy.
That's awesome.
You know, like when she's beating her bad guy, she's doing it like to the beat. She has a music video for every fight scene. You know, like she has a dinosaur that follows her because he loves her. She didn't mind meld him or brainwash him or anything. He just loves her.
That sounds so fun.
It is.
Yeah. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
What show is this?
It's called Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. It's on Disney Plus.
Awesome. That sounds so fun. I would love to watch that.
Yeah, it's also a very, you know, girl power, girl-centered show. Alfre Woodard plays her grandmother. Lawrence Fishburne is an executive producer.
Oh, awesome. This is, Oh, I love this.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about Entrapta more? Yeah, let's talk about Entrapta.
Yeah. So let's talk about Entrapta, because Entrapta is such a juicy conversation, because she, as you all know, we love Entrapta.
And we have struggled over our conversations with her a bit.
We have struggled over our conversations with her a bit because she is a rich, complex character, and they do spend a lot of time with her. And there are so many different things that they kind of do with her, and sometimes they underwrite her, which is something that Jenny and I have had conversations about, where it's like they could do something here and they're underwriting, or they're trying for something and they're missing and it's coming off wrong. So, Aria, I would love to hear what you feel about Entrapta, because this is some actually a place where Jenny and I have kind of bumped heads a little bit, because it's bumped up against our various like soft points in our hearts, where it's been like, ooh, we need to work this one out. So please, let's unwrap Entrapta.
Absolutely. Entrapta is probably one of my favorite animated characters, and maybe that's because I am a non-white AFAB autistic individual, and for the longest time I couldn't fathom the fact that I might be autistic. Never even occurred to me until I met one of like my best friends in the whole world, and they were not white, and they were queer, and they were non-binary, and they were autistic. And I was like, we have a lot of very similar things in common. That's interesting. And they're like, yeah, well, I have this because of my autism. And I'm like, interesting. Exactly. And so I realized over time that I was autistic, and I have been struggling with a lot that I didn't realize. And the reason it didn't occur to me sooner is because of the representation in media. And I can clearly draw that line because I've always thought autism was very fascinating. I watched a documentary called Life Animated, highly recommend it. It's incredible. It's about, you know, a young autistic white straight man, presumably straight. It's a documentary and about how he uses Disney to interpret the world, and how from a very young age it is Disney that has like really captured his heart, and it's about him starting to live on his own. And I was like, oh, well, I really connect with the world through movies, and I really, you know, like every time someone mentions something, I kind of view it in the shape of movies and think about what I have seen and how it's been represented for me. But I'm not awkward. I don't like, I am awkward, but I'm not like socially awkward where I can't, you know, I look people in the eyes so well, you know, I count 1, 2, 3 on one eye, 1, 2, 3 on another eye. Like I got this thing down. And so I was like, oh, I can't possibly be autistic. Or you see, not so great representation, for Rain Man, for example. That's a whole other can of worms.
That's a whole other ass thing.
But you see these characters throughout, and they are written by non-autistic people. They are portrayed by non-autistic people. There have only been a few characters in all of media. I think it's like 2 or 3 that have ever been actually portrayed by an autistic person. And one of those is Quinny in Heartbreak High. Highly recommend that as well. If you want like really good autistic representation, that's the place to go. But I didn't think that I had autism because I only saw autism in one lens. I didn't have anyone in my life who openly told me that they were autistic. I think now that we're older and I've been talking to people more, I'm like, a lot of my friends are autistic. Interesting. But I think that it comes down to representation, and that's what I'm talking about in terms of how children interact with media and how it impacts them. If they see something as one note, if they see something as this is the way that it is, and over and over and over again, they might completely, miss something in their own lives because they don't feel like those characters represent them. So with Entrapta, first of all, like as someone who's passionate about science, I love that they chose to make the scientific one, a girl, or at least AFAB. Entrapta hasn't officially said her gender that she likes, but
That's true. That's true.
Well, but we've never heard Entrapta correct anyone for calling her she, her. So
exactly.
Presumably, if she didn't want to be called she, her, she would say, actually, it's not she, her, it's they, them, or whatever.
I agree with that. So let's say, but she's a young girl who is a powerful scientist. And I think that they show autism in a very interesting way. I think that I hadn't even considered it when she talks about, I have all my robots do all these things for me. And it's like, those are assisted devices. Those are schedules. Yeah. Those are,
yeah.
And I was like, wow, I don't think I've ever seen an autistic character talk about their things like that really support them, except for Quinny in Heartbreak High, honestly. So I really love Entrapta, and I agree. I think sometimes she's underwritten, but one of the moments that really stand out to me for her is when she is trying to, it's in the last season. I don't know if you guys have covered it yet, but it's when she is trying to get the message out or trying to figure out where Glimmer is.
Yeah, we have.
Okay. We have, and this is actually something we want to talk about because Jenny and I have a lot to say about this episode.
Yeah, but go ahead. Say what you were going to say.
So please, say what you're going to say.
Okay, and then I cannot wait to hear what you guys are going to say. But that moment for me is so impactful because she said she finally is able to put into words why she is acting the way that she's acting. And that's not usually what Entrapta can do. It's really hard for her to do that. And it's so sad. It hurts my heart because these girls have been with Entrapta for a while and they haven't fully taken the time to get to know her and to understand her to the point where they think that she's just about the tech. Like they have gotten to the point, and Entrapta shields herself with tech. Entrapta understands tech, and Entrapta understands that she can be useful if she has the information about tech. She views it as her way of kind of communicating with people and being useful for people. Mm-hmm. And all they're thinking is, you just care about the tech. You don't care about our friends. Our friends are in trouble. Our friends could be hurt, and you don't care. And how she finally breaks down and is able to communicate that the reason she is so obsessed with this is because of her friend. She loves Glimmer. Glimmer is her friend. And it's only in that moment that the girls realize that Entrapta has this whole internal life that has been so difficult for her to communicate, has been so difficult to her to bring words to her experience and to her feelings. And because I'm sure she's had a lot of issues with connecting with people. And that's why Hordak was so important for her. Because I know that a lot of the time we see Hordak and Entrapta like just working on tech, but we even see those little, connections between them of like when she looks at him after he says a bunch of stuff and she looks at him and goes, I like being your friend too. And I think that Hordak takes the time to understand her a bit more. He's still a tyrant and is not a great guy.
Yeah.
But I think that moment when she finally breaks down and tells her friends, like, that's how she's feeling and that she does understand, it gets to me and it really affects me. And I've had those moments where I've tried to communicate something over and over and over again, and it's just not being understood.
Right.
And having that moment, I think, was really powerful for me. What about you guys? I want to hear y'all's thoughts, please.
Yeah. Jenny, do you want to tag on to that?
So we did have a long conversation about this moment in this episode and the way it connects back to an earlier moment in this episode, because there was, for me at least, a big disconnect between this moment, which is really satisfying, and an earlier moment in this episode where they're all sitting around the campfire trying to talk about, how are we going to save Glimmer? And then Entrapta comes over and she's like, oh, you guys talking about whatever, the tech. And they're like, yes, we're talking about Glimmer and how we can save Glimmer from space. Remember Glimmer? And she just kind of stares at them. And they have a whole, I don't remember every detail now because it's been a while since we talked about it. They have a whole back and forth about, remember Glimmer? And she just kind of stares at them. And they're like, Glimmer? And she just kind of stares at them in this very blank way, but she doesn't look stressed or anxious. And because it's a cartoon, and because of the way they've previously handled moments where it's like, we want you to know how this person's feeling in this moment, they really missed the mark on showing us, is she stressed? Is she dissociating? Is she having whatever kind of moment where she's paralyzed and she can't respond because she's having whatever type of internal experience? They didn't do any of that. They just kind of played it for comedy where she's just like, la, la, la. La, la, la.
She kind of has this like blank smile.
Smile, but she doesn't look upset.
Yeah, and the blank smile could be interpreted as something, but as we actually had a really wonderful listener write in and have this conversation with us. Because, like I said, this is a conversation that we have because the episode is launch, and the episode is supposed to give us insight into Entrapta, but we feel like in the episode, Jenny and I kind of came to the conclusion that there might be scenes that were cut from it, or because some of the things just are disconnected.
I feel like the writers wanted to have their cake and eat it too. They wanted that first moment to be for comedy, and then they wanted to have this big sincere moment later where they're like, oh, we didn't understand, and now we do. But there was no reason in that first moment for Entrapta to just sit there blankly and not respond to a very direct, clear question. Like, remember Glimmer? Yeah. And the whole point was, well, maybe she was stressed by Mermista's tone, because remember, Catra used to speak to her in that tone, and then Catra ended up betraying her. But it's like, okay, but the whole point of this episode is that Entrapta doesn't pick up on tone, and she has no idea that they're mad at her until this moment near the end. So why would she be stressed by Mermista's tone in this early moment and not just respond to this very direct question, which is, remember Glimmer? And she doesn't respond at all. She's just like, la, la, la.
Yeah.
So those two moments really don't connect for me.
Yeah, they don't connect. And then there are the other moments where they don't connect, where we see, like, in the past, we've had Perfuma have a lot of sympathy for Entrapta. And then here, this is a conversation that Jenny and I got into where we were both kind of like, I was like, why doesn't Perfuma have any sympathy for Entrapta anymore? And that got me, like, in the personals, because I was like, why?
I felt very defensive of Perfuma because I felt like Perfuma was getting blamed for not having enough sympathy for Entrapta now. And I'm like, listen, she's been trying, and now has the right to be hurt, to be like, listen, I'm trying to meet you halfway and you're not giving me anything back. And now I'm just expressing to you that I'm hurt that you're not trying and you're not caring.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, Perfuma's being mean to Entrapped. And I'm like, Perfuma's a human being too. She's allowed to express that she's hurt. She's not calling Entrapped to any mean name. She's not saying you're a bad person. She's just saying, I'm hurt that you're not thinking about how your actions affect other people. That's legitimate.
Yeah, and I was having a lot of feelings about it because I was like, Perfuma will, extend these grace to other people. But in this moment, I felt she was being ableist.
And I felt that was extremely unfair.
Yeah.
And then we cut that entire conversation.
Yeah.
See, but I love that. I think so. Just going back to what you guys said, I think it's totally played for laughs, and I don't appreciate that. And I think that even in my brain, I focus on the latter scene because of the lack of representation.
And that scene is beautiful, but it wasn't built on anything solid.
Exactly. And that was the kind of the conclusion that we both came to and completely agree is that that's the scene that you have to focus on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right? But we also need to say, okay, great. Entrapped is a great starting point, but there are all these issues. So how do we represent autistic people in the future? And I think that, it could be totally honest that she disassociates in that moment, but you can't leave that all up to the audience. You have to show, you have to be delicate about these things and guide, especially because of how much bad representation is out there.
And because they do such a good job of showing other people dissociating when they choose we want you to know that someone's dissociating and someone's emotionally going through something right now. When they want to show it, they show it.
Absolutely. When they show Catra dissociating
and Adora
on the ship and Adora, those are really accurate.
And, it's like they really get it. Like if you ever had a dissociative episode, you get it right away in the gut.
Yeah. I think that is another thing that She-Ra does so beautifully.
Like in the Shadows of Mysticor, they show it for Adora really well too.
Yes, they do.
So
yeah.
Well. And that's one of the things that I love about this show is that it shows trauma in such a powerful way that I also hope that some younger viewers are watching and going, that happens to me too. Because I feel like me personally about things that I have gone through in my life, I did not realize those things were because of trauma. I did not realize that what I was going through was dissociation. And having those little moments of you are not alone, this does not just happen to you, this happens to a lot of other people, is so beautiful. And so with such a traumatized character like Entrapta, because again, she has gotten to the point where she is alone in her lab and has robots deliver her food to her. She does not interact with a single human, I think, because she has been so misunderstood, because no one seems to understand her. Her robots understand her because they're very, first of all, she programmed them, so that's one thing. But, and so not only do they listen to her, she knows their programming and how they respond and what
they're predictable.
Respond to.
They're predictable. Yes.
Exactly. And so it's so sad that, this great show has this moment just for laughs of haha, Entrapta doesn't know what, But when she breaks down, I think that that's one of the truest moments of an autistic character that I've ever seen. This moment of, I struggle with friends, which I think is huge in the autistic community. I know that growing up, I always had friend problems and I didn't understand why. And seeing that represented like that was really powerful, but sad that it was after such a disconnected scene.
Yeah, and you're really speaking to something that we see. It's a trope that we see with Entrapta, and as everybody knows, Jenny and I love Buffy, and we see the this kind of autism coded as the comic relief.
Yes,
and we see
with Anya.
With Anya. And, we see these things where in our conversation that we had, Aria, about the idea that one of the big things that you see in media when something is autistic coded. We're going to use that as, imagine that is in, quotes, is the idea of the alien dropped into the situation that that they do not understand, right? And we see that with Anya, and we see in the Buffy episode, The Body, when we have Anya trying to understand grief.
Yeah, I was going to say it also works for some very serious moments. It's not only comic relief.
Correct.
Anya has some moments where she really gets to the core of things in some very sincere ways. And those are things that I relate to a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when she's trying to understand grief, and there's some, Joyce was here and now she's just this body, and we see this on the okay, she's a 1,000-year-old ex-demon that doesn't understand the consequence of death, but there is also this understanding of why is this, what is this feeling of grief? Why am I feeling this? I'm having this issue of processing emotion, which, once again, this is also kind of a stereotype of people in the autistic community, that you don't have emotions, right? Or you don't understand how to process them. But there is this kind of understanding of trying to process the world and the symbols and the, conversations around you in ways that you can understand. And I kind of want to wrap into Adora, actually, as being coded as autistic and not just Entrapta, because
yes,
I have had many conversations with other people and also with Jenny about how, and with Aria as well, about Adora being coded as autistic in a very different way than Entrapta. So I was having a conversation about this, and with somebody very dear to me who is autistic in there, and this person was like, yeah, that whole map that Adora did in Princess Prom, when she was trying to make everybody's social connections and understand exactly what the maps are and how to completely understand everybody's, how to be a social person in this situation. That's the most autistic thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because it's okay, Adora needs the script, the social script, and knows exactly what the social script is in order to enter this, to properly enter this social situation and make the proper connections to make sure that they don't have the, to know that they're doing the right thing.
So she can win prom.
So she can win prom, but also so she has the script to go in and talk to people.
Because that's the only way she understands how to engage with it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I have made many a map like that in my brain. And I, before social events. Getting to see that was really cool. And I really like this idea. So, yes, the autistically coded person tends to be the one who is, as you said, the alien drop down, or someone who just is completely new to this environment, right? I know that some people, and I don't know if I fully agree with this, but some people talk about Elle Woods in Legally Blonde being autistically coded.
I've heard this as well. And I've heard this as well from some autistic femme people that I'm friends with.
I've actually never seen that movie.
Oh, Jenny, it's great.
It's been on my list forever, but I haven't gotten around to it.
It's one of those fantastic femme power films from the 90s, 2000s. It's great.
Yeah.
It's totally worth it. But it's this idea of being completely free of social norms while
because
also
the rules are stupid.
Because rules are stupid.
Stupid. And just like Anya says, where it's I know the rules, I just think that they're stupid. And I love that. That moment is...
Amen to that.
That moment is so powerful. And I think that that's one of the power of the autistic community is the queer community and the trans community. Any community where you are quote unquote out of the norm, you have the permission to play. You have the framework to think about things differently. And I really love that. But then it also can become a cage, right? Where it's oh, but if I have to get, let's say for Princess Prom, if I have to make a good impression, if I have to follow the rules to achieve my goal, that's where we struggle. And that's the hard part.
Yeah, that's a recipe for dread for me. I don't like situations like that.
Or it's
No.
like, right, exactly. It's like, if I break any of these rules, there will be immediate consequences.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. I don't thrive in environments like that.
no.
And no
Yeah.
one
No.
should have to. No one should have to.
But
because
some people do thrive in environments like that. Some people enjoy knowing exactly what the rules are and cleaving to them.
that is very true. But in itself, it's like they're not choosing the rules. They're choosing to follow the rules. It's not the
Exactly.
rules that
Exactly. They like the idea of knowing, they want to know exactly what the rules are and memorizing them and being like, I'm going to be the best rule follower ever. Some people enjoy that.
Exactly. But it's not about them enjoying the content of the rules. It's the rules as they are. The concept of having rules.
Yes.
Well, there's no punishment. Well, there's also like the idea that there's no punishment involved because, like you're not transgressing anything. You're avoiding pain. And I'm sure that there's something Foucault about this that I forgot 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Like Adora's very enthusiastic about, I'm going to memorize this entire, 100-foot long scroll of rules, and I'm going to be the best rule follower ever, and I'm going to get the gold star for having the best mastery of these rules.
Yeah. And so having these kind of characters in media and can be really powerful, especially for young kids who are seeing this. But then again, we're also talking about the pitfalls of these characters and how we can do better. And I think one of them, having autistic writers in the room. I mean, I feel like that's always the basic answer of like, have diversity in the room.
Yeah.
If you're going to talk about, but then of course, like, we also have to understand that just because, 2 autistics are in the room doesn't mean that they speak for the whole autistic community. They speak for their experience.
Right, just like we were saying before about no
right.
one person can represent every experience.
Exactly.
Right. Plus, it's like you could be autistic. I'm sure that there are autistic people in a writer's room, but they're not writing that. Right.
Exactly.
Like, they're writing something else.
Mm-hmm. And they're not focusing on that, And so I think that it's kind of interesting to think about, let's just take Adora and Entrapta. They're 2 very different characters, but they are both uniquely autistically coded. And it's a start. It's definitely a start. And because you think about other shows. So there are a lot of other shows that have autistically coded characters, especially more now, that are doing a lot better of a job. So slowly but surely, not necessarily better than She-Ra, but definitely better than what we've had in the past.
Yeah.
There's Marcy from Amphibia. She is a great character and really, talks, one of the main plot points is about her struggling with change, and it leads to a lot of like difficulties within her life. And it, they play it for laughs a lot of the time, but she finds herself in dangerous situations or ends up falling or ends up, hurting herself somehow. And they sometimes play it for a laugh, but a lot of it is like, a lot of the journey for her is like, she is powerful within her own self and she doesn't necessarily need other people to look out for her. And I thought that was a really powerful message. I mean, there's Peridot, who, is from Steven Universe and totally autistically coded. And some people are, it's kind of like the aliens come onto the earth and like you're in a new environment. So that's part of it. But also there are a lot of other gems in that show that come into earth and they're like, oh, okay, now this is how this works. Whereas Peridot has a struggle with it. There's even Norma from Dead End, which I highly recommend.
Yeah, I watched it, but not recently, so it's not fresh in my mind. But I really like that show.
It's such a good show. And they talk about the social anxiety with autism. There's an entire episode where it is about that her worst nightmare is a group of her colleagues on the beach playing icebreakers.
Yes.
Oh, sweet baby.
Sweet baby. But like, how often does that happen where it's like we have to be put into these situations for our jobs?
Yeah. Have you guys seen Star Trek Discovery?
I've seen some of it, and I dig it. So,
well, there's a whole gaggle of space queers on that show, which is one of the many reasons I love it. So there's the like adult generation, which is Anthony Rapp and Wilson Cruz. amazing. And Tig Notaro, who is like the grumpy auntie lesbian engineer. And so then they end up adopting 2 teen space queers who are a couple, a non-binary and a trans couple. And so the non-binary person, their name is Adira. And they're like brilliant, but they struggle with social stuff. And even though it's never mentioned explicitly in any way, I code Adira as an autistic character. They have to be really pushed to socialize with their peers in their age group in any way. It's like pulling teeth.
I love that. And so we're seeing all of these like really cool representations of people who are autistic or autistically coded at least. And I'm really excited to see what's next and how they change that. I mean, I think that, as I mentioned, like Quinny from Heartbreak High is a huge win. She,
I definitely want to see that.
That actress is absolutely phenomenal. They really, I don't think that they have, I'm not sure if they have people who identify as autistic in the writer's room, but they look to her for a lot of things. And they, cause like also I don't.
Yeah. All the best shows, I feel like they do that for their teen cast members, all the way back to My So-Called Life, you know, like Winnie Holtzman on My So-Called Life, she really looked to her teen actors to incorporate realness into their roles. And that was revolutionary in 1994.
Yeah, which made that show one of the like really great representations of teens. Like I remember watching
speaking
that show
of Wilson Cruz, he was the first queer teen character on network television. Ricky Vasquez.
We love Wilson Cruz here.
I love him.
Yeah, and now, you know, I mean, Star Trek Discovery is not on the air anymore, but it just finished recently. So he was, the ship's doctor on Star Trek Discovery.
I love that. And yeah, I think that Ricky was huge, right? And
he was. I mean, I was the same age as those characters. I was 15 when they were 15 when it was on air. And, having any canonically queer teen character on air when I was that age.
Oh, yeah.
It was unbelievable. And so I would watch that show with my mom and we would cry together. And my mom would say to me, I feel like he's just one of your friends. And I wish that we could bring him home with us and take care of him.
And I love that. And that's what media does, right? Like one of my favorite stories is about that actor. He hadn't talked to his father.
Yeah.
For years.
He wasn't out when the show started.
And he hadn't talked to his father for years because they had a fight about his queerness. And then when the episode came out about like Ricky's home life and all of those different things, which I'm sure they look to him a lot for those like scripts and such. His dad ended up calling him after not talking for like 7-8 years. Yeah. Because he saw the representation and he was like, I understand now.
That's right.
And that's what media can do.
That's right.
And that's what media can do poorly too, right? That's what,
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
It's a double-edged sword. It can be the most powerful, wonderful, amazing, detrimental, destructive thing that we have. And so thinking about what people watch in general, but what our kids end up watching is so, so vital because kids are more sponges than adults, like just absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, adults can watch media and be changed by it forever. And I think that will continue. And I am glad that will continue. And I hope that we keep creating stories where people question their realities and question their opinions based on seeing a really beautiful portrayal of a kind of person that they've never met, whether that's race-wise or disability-wise or, and so that's why I really want to get into this field is because you can empower entire communities and bring understanding to people outside of those communities just with media and just with storytelling. And that's why I think that I'm really glad that there are now more representations of autistic people in media. I think that that's really powerful, but I can't wait to see what continues on and how maybe we play the neurotypicals for the laugh. There's a TikToker I really enjoy, and she talks about normal people versus neurotypical people.
Does she happen to have a UK accent and have like spiky blue and purple hair?
Yes, she does.
I love her.
She's amazing.
I love her. Yeah, I just watched one of her videos where she was like, I think she's a teacher, and so she was doing like a POV where it's like, you know, the normals are the neurospicy and the neurotypicals are the ones that we have to educate you. It's like how to deal with your neurotypical students. And so she's preparing her teachers. It's like a teacher training day. She's like, all right, you're going to have a few neurotypicals in your class, so you have to be prepared to deal with them. And like, you know, all the teachers being like, oh, do we have to? It's like, well, you know, you're going to have a few. So it's like, here's what you should expect. They're going to be sluggish in gym. They're going to have less logic skills in math. And the teachers would be like, well, that's okay. I'll just give them extra homework until they understand. I'll just make them run extra laps until they get it. And it's like, well, no, you can't just beat them into submission. That's not going to help. You know, and it's like, oh, well, it's not my fault these kids don't get it. You know, it's like role playing, you know.
And
That's funny.
Yeah.
Those are coming up, I think, more on TikTok of like kind of questioning like how, you know, if there's another creator that talks about if we treated men the way we treated women, or if we treated white people the way that black people are treated in this country.
And if America was a Judeo-centric culture instead of a Christian-centric culture, and if, you know, the holiday season was the Jewish holiday season in September and early October, and if your principal sent out letters like, hey, families, it's the holiday season again, and here's all the amazing, you know, secular activities we're doing this holiday season. Yeah. You know, and it's all Jewish stuff. But it's secular. It's secular. And
we have secular.
Of course, we've had a few Christian families who complained, but I don't know why they're complaining. And, you know, we added a few of your symbols to the secular holiday horn.
Right.
You know, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, we did a few things for the Feast of St. Francis. That's your Christian holiday for the holiday season, right?
You're welcome.
Yeah. So, yeah, all of these things to show, you know, that your inclusion things are bullshit.
Yeah. And I think that more shows are putting more representation out there. I think that, so for example, like Owl House, the queer representation in the Owl House is divine. And it is so normalized. It is one of those shows that you see the relationship bloom between Luce and Amity, and you're like, wow, I've seen this a million times between a boy and a girl, and I hadn't seen that, like, just easy little crush. The nervousness was about having a crush and not about, oh, is Luce straight or queer.
Right.
It was about, oh my gosh, I have a crush on this person. And you see that. You see the like jitteriness and you see the like unsureness, but it's never like, are you gay? Like that's never the question. It's the question is, I like you, do you like me? Which is the question that all these, you know, little boys and little girls have been asking in media forever.
Right.
So having these shows that have more complex relationships like Adora and Katra, having more simplistic ones like Luce and Amity, it can be a really powerful tool to just show the range and show that, and the normalization of all of these different experiences.
Yeah. I mean, that is Etheria. Like, Etheria is that just like homosocial, like everything on Etheria is just you're queer unless assumed not.
Exactly.
Yeah. Aria, did you see Raya and the Last Dragon?
Yeah, I did.
That shit is super gay.
Absolutely, but they don't kiss.
No, I mean, it's all subtext, but I kept waiting for it to be main text because it really seemed like it was going to go that way, but no.
No, they wouldn't. They would never. They would never.
But, I mean, come on, Princess Undercut? Are you fucking kidding?
Seriously.
That's you, Jenny.
But that's what the one girl calls the girl who she has her, like, I love you, I hate you crush on.
I love that.
And she has an undercut, and she, like, you know, her, like, sexy, like, mean flirting is like, okay, Princess Undercut.
I love that. Yeah, but, like, getting these more, going back to Etheria and how it's this, like, non-toxic masculinity, you know.
Yes.
And I think that is so important for young AFABs And young AMABs.
Yes, of course. Of course.
I think that getting to see a world where Bo is seen as a powerful archer who is also a tech wizard, who is this incredible, like, he's wonderful, he's fabulous, and he is strong and powerful and a warrior. But he's also
a big
really
squishy heart.
His friend.
Yeah.
He's a big, and he lets his emotions show. And I don't think, sometimes it's made for a laugh, but a majority of the time it is just Bo being Bo. And it's seen as this, like, it's like totally normalized. Like, let boys be sweet. Let boys have emotions. And I hope that, young AMABs watch this and think like, oh, like that's okay. It's okay to think about my feelings that way.
Yeah. I feel like I was just seeing the first glimmers of this when I was an undergrad around like the year 2000 when the show Adventure Time with Finn and Jake first came on. I was like, these are some real different young boy protagonists.
Yeah, they are.
Like, I felt like the tides were turning with that show. And that's when we first got Bubblegum and Marceline.
Yeah.
And they eventually were some early queer representation.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I definitely agree. Yeah. I definitely agree that Adventure Time definitely subverted a lot. I mean, it subverted reality, though. That show, and that also that also leads to, once again, what I brought up about how easy it is to subvert all manner of roles, be it gender roles or, like erasing or coding race as different things, like coding Marceline as a vampire, right? Instead of the actress that plays Marceline and her father are both black. But it still allows that for that sort of transgression, right?
In genre worlds, you mean?
Yeah, in genre.
Well, in Steven Universe technically takes place in our world, in the human world, and there's also gem involvement. And Steven is this beautifully soft, wonderful human being. There is even an episode where one of his friends are going to go on and she freaks out and she's like, I can't go on and do it. And so he goes on stage with makeup and a dress, and it's never played for a laugh. It is never played for a single laugh. It is like, oh, Steven's up there. Oh, go Steven.
Yeah.
And so we are seeing this change. We are seeing, that softer kind of, AMAB representation. And that show also has queer characters who are humans too. And that can be, and also gems, but.
And also gems, yeah.
And also gems. But I think that, with seeing shows like this, like shows like, Steven Universe and Amphibia, Dead End, Avatar: The Last Airbender, that's a whole other conversation, of course.
We've had so many Avatar conversations here. Yeah. Jenny and I love Avatar. But
I have a stuffed Appa in my bed.
Yeah, but
So
that whole thing is, Avatar and Korra, those are rife with the stuff,
Right?
Yeah. I would love to live in Republic City by the Spirit Portal.
Absolutely. But like Avatar, having this resurgence now because it was ahead of its time, right?
It was
something, it was on a network like Nickelodeon where the Nickelodeon channel was created to sell toys and to sell merchandise to kids. They did not care about what was in between the commercials as long as it got kids to watch. So the fact that Avatar got on the air for 3 years was remarkable. But it's also now being said have such a resurgence, and all of these other shows are following suit, I think, in a lot of ways.
Well, because the early audience of Avatar is now like young parents. So of course, the nostalgia factor.
Exactly.
Yeah, and Jenny and I both watched it as adults.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, I was an adult when it came out. I got into it because my little brother is 19 years younger than me. So, like, I went over one day, and my dad, who is, like, an older dad when he had my brother. My dad and my brother were watching it together. There was like an all-day marathon on Nickelodeon. They were like, come sit down and watch this show with us. So I was like, 29 or however, mid-20s. My brother was like 10 and my dad was like my age plus 30. And we're all watching it together.
And that's the biggest key, I think. So you guys talk about how She-Ra is an all ages show.
Right. Mm-hmm. And it really is all ages. And
that is the key. So I think that, well, first of all, just in terms of like little Professor Smart Brain moment of media interaction, but children gain more from media when they are watching with someone else who is older than them, asking them questions about the media, discussing about the media. It's called co-viewing. So essentially, we don't want to keep churning out shows that parents want to die whenever it comes on. Like the amount of parents I've talked to about how awful Peppa Pig is, and I was a consultant for a project at one point, and they were talking about Bluey and versus Peppa Pig, and I had to suffer through some Peppa Pig episodes. And it's awful. It's animated poorly. It is the voice acting, all the parents are just dumb. Like, there's so many negative things about it. And how many parents I've talked to are like, I hate Peppa, right? But their kids love it, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. But then they don't get that co-viewing experience. So even there probably are these benefits of Peppa Pig, but a lot of the kids aren't experiencing it because you could not.
There's no engagement.
Parents. There's no engagement.
Right.
But having something
Bluey,
like She-Ra or Bluey allows parents to get something out of the media as well. So
because you can enter that world with your child,
right,
and talk about it with them and engage in fantasy play in that world with them.
Exactly. And so that's why something like Bluey is so revolutionary, because it is not only like She-Ra is like a little bit older kids and all ages, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be like, hey, you should watch She-Ra with your 5-year-old. Like,
I think 5 is old enough for She-Ra.
I definitely know, like, people have come up to me and be like, oh, Meph, I watch She-Ra with my niece, or,
Yeah.
I'm like, why are you telling me this?
Yeah. And I've seen, like, when, because we were watching it in real time. I don't know if you were watching it in real time. So when the finale aired, so many compilation videos were made of people reacting to the big finale shot, like sobbing and, like, having all these big emotional reactions. And a lot of those were very small children. Mm-hmm. And just having these, like, just jumping up in, like, not knowing how to handle these big emotional reactions they were having, like really little kids just having these big joyful reactions. And that was just something that I took so much joy from, obviously, these compilation videos.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I think it's easier when it isn't geared. I mean, I feel like Bluey is geared for much younger.
I would agree. It's not geared for younger kids. Yeah. It's not geared for younger kids.
No, it's not geared for younger kids. And I mean, I'm saying this as someone who grew up in the 80s, and my parents didn't monitor my media intake at all in any way. Like, I was watching R-rated movies when I was 5. And of course, there's downsides to that. I mean, I am a huge horror buff. I'm a lifelong horror buff. So for some kids, I'm sure that would have backfired, and they would have had to dial it back and be like, okay, maybe we should monitor the media intake. It didn't have any backfiring issues with me. And they had a lot of their own shit that they couldn't keep on top of that was a bigger issue. Right. But, like, this is a common story. Like, kids in the 80s were not monitored across a variety of benchmarks.
Right. And also the children's media for kids in the 80s was more violent. It absolutely was, like, lower quality in terms of, I mean, watch old She-Ra episodes. Like, Yeah,
but so, like, the idea... Right, but the idea that there was children's media that could have been inappropriate for me is kind of laughable, because, like, I was watching, like, Night of the Living Dead. So, like, what cartoon should I not have watched that would have been worse than that?
Yeah, but, like, they made children's media out of the film RoboCop.
Yeah, like, there was nothing really off limits.
No child should ever see the film. I watched RoboCop as a kid, and I'm like, I should not have seen RoboCop as a kid. And then watching it as an adult, I have the context of, like, oh, this is totally, like, a satire on, like, hyper-consumerism and how it ties into, like, a police state. But as a kid, I'm just like, hey, RoboCop shot someone in the dick. Like, that's what I remember.
And that's the thing, right? You want your kids to watch something, at an age where they can get more of the subtext, or you can walk them through more of the subtext. And
Right.
so I think that having shows that are for all ages is such a beautiful thing because of that. Like,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
agreed.
and so I think that, and She-Ra comes from, a past of literally He-Man and She-Ra were created, the shows, to sell toys. Like,
Yes.
that was
Yes.
the purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that you even feel a little bit of a remnants of that when you guys talked about how they wanted to make She-Ra not white, but they were like, oh, but she wouldn't be recognizable for the toys.
She wouldn't be recognizable for the
Right,
toys.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And so I think that also goes to a point of like, we not only do we need diversity in the writers' room, we need diversity in the cast and things like that. We also need people behind the scenes who are honoring children and who are caring about children. So like for Bluey, the head of advertising or something like that at the BBC for Bluey keeps getting calls about all these candies that want to put Bluey on them. And she's like, no, we want to put Bluey on fruit. We want to put Bluey on toothpaste. We want to put Bluey on things that are good and healthy for children because we have a duty to the children.
That's
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah, they only show them eating healthy food on Bluey.
That's cool. I like
Yeah.
that idea.
Yeah, and I think that that's what really needs to change.
That's always been a core struggle in children's media is, are we here to honor children and support them, or are we here for capitalism?
Absolutely.
Yeah, or to push propaganda, right? Like G.I. Joe. Like G.I. Joe was Cold War propaganda.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like,
and
yeah,
that's
yeah.
so like my 3 pillars as someone going into children's media is Joan Cooney, who was the lead psychologist on Sesame Street, because she was the one.
Yes.
She was the one who was like, you know what? We can use this media platform not to have kids memorize beer commercial jingles,
Right.
but to actually learn and to support. And she was like, we're trying to close the school readiness gap
Yes.
for kids who are in
Yes.
low SES communities.
Yes.
That is a pillar. Mr. Rogers, who
Yes,
really
that's who I was gonna bring up.
respected children, talked to them about important issues, because parents have this idea of like, if I shelter my children from these things that are happening in the world, they're not going to know. No, they're going to know, but they're going to know from sources that aren't you.
That's
and they're
right.
going to know,
That's
so
right.
having him sit down and like really directly talk to kids, and his just viewpoint of love and acceptance. And he was one of the first people where he had a black man and his black man who was the post office, the mailman, actually washed their feet in the same pool together, when integration in pools was a huge topic. And then finally with Raffi, who would pass on millions of dollars because he didn't want to sell to his kids, because he didn't want to it to be a negative aspect in kids' lives. He just wanted to spread the love and joy that he had, go on tour, sing with the kids, but he didn't want toys. He didn't want movies to be made. Like he wanted full control, and he lost out a lot of money. And that's hard as someone who we live in a capitalistic society.
Right.
And it's hard to turn down that money a lot of the time, but we need to start honoring the children in our lives. We need to start honoring the children in the world and really consider what we have to do to make sure that their future is bright.
That's right. Amen to that. And LeVar Burton, too. He really fought for Reading Rainbow.
Exact. Oh, I should put him on one of my, he will be the next person on my pillars.
So here's the fun part. Aria, where can people find you on socials or follow your work or any of that super duper fun stuff?
Damn. I don't have any like real socials in terms of my media work, which is, I need to do that. That is on my list of things to do.
Okay.
But I would definitely check out the conversation. I have a Bluey article up on there.
Yeah, we're definitely going to post your Bluey article in our show notes.
I don't know if there's a place that people can find me. I'm not there yet, unfortunately.
That's okay.
You're good.
No
You're
worries.
good.
You're still in school. People
still
will
in
know
school.
your name from your article. And then in a few years, when you're another heavy hitter in the world of children's educational media, people can be like, oh, yeah, I know that bitch.
I hope so.
So here's my favorite part, Aria. I hope you're excited to do this. Hey, Jenny and Aria.
Yes, Meth.
Yes, Meth.
What did we learn today?
We learned that diversity in children's educational media is core to the survival of humanity.
What did we learn today?
We learned that children's media is powerful, and we're lucky to live in an age where we have so many wonderful shows coming out, and hopefully more in the future.
Oh, those are really good things to learn.
Meth, what did you learn today?
No one's ever flipped it back on Meth before.
No one's ever said that to me. I learned about co-watching.
Yes.
I love it.
Rock on.
I didn't know about that term, and I did not remember the name of the psychologist that helped found Sesame Street. So, because I knew that was because I knew it was a whole team, and I knew it was incredibly deliberate, but I forgot the name of that psychologist.
Yeah, there's a documentary about the road to Sesame Street that I saw sometime in the last 6 months that she was featured in. I don't remember what platform it was on.
It's on HBO Max, and it's called Street Gang. And you can also listen to the book Street Gang on Spotify if you're interested in the creation of Sesame Street.
Amazing. Sesame Street is so fundamental to my existence, as it is to many people of many generations. Well, folks, if you liked what you heard, you can like and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast fix. You can also follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube, where you should like and follow us and comment on all of those things.
And review, so people can find us more easily.
And we are at all of those places at HeyAdoraCast, or you can email us all of your ideas. And as you can plainly see, we love having conversations about this.
Please do.
Please do. Email us. You may be able to come on the show. So email us at heyadoracast@gmail.com. So we have a Patreon. And if you become a member of the Rebellion, you can get fantastic perks. You can get Patreon-only live watches. You can get video hangouts. You can get playlists. You can get so many things.
You can hang out on our Discord and have fun community chats.
Our Discord is awesome. We have wonderful community chats. I like to talk about philosophy on our Discord.
You can see pictures of our pets.
You can see pictures of our pets. Jenny is posting pictures of her new pets.
I'm about to adopt 2 kitties. You can find the link to our Patreon and to all of our fun stuff at our website, which is, as always, heyadora.gay, the most fun website ever.
We definitely paid to get .gay as our URL.
Yes, we did.
You should.
The day that .gay became available, we nabbed it.
We literally nabbed it. We're like, we need to get .gay.
Yes.
So, anyway.
So, you're welcome.
This has been such an amazing opportunity, and like getting to talk to y'all has been beautiful. I even talked to some people about how I just enjoyed how we went straight. We went straight, even just talking on Sunday, we did not do any niceties. We just neurodivergent it up.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Nice.
It was beautiful.
It felt so lovely.
We just jumped right in. Yeah, it was great.
Are fabulous. I'm so glad you guys are doing this work.
Thank you. We're
you.
glad that you're here with us too. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a blast. And remember, queer joy is radical.
And queer love saves the universe.
Woo!
Woo!
Ow!
Neuro
Okay.
spicy!